I was 13, the first time I realized my mother could lie to me and still look me in the eyes. She sat across the kitchen table with a trembling coffee mug, and that thin smile she wore when she was trying to hold herself together. I watched the steam rise between us, curling like something alive. She looked older, or maybe just tired, and I wanted to believe it was just work, just the divorce, just the weight of being everything for everyone. But the truth was sitting in the silence between us, and it was louder than either of us could speak. "Claire," she said, her voice soft like tissue paper, "there's someone I want you to meet." I didn't answer. I didn't blink. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine like she was asking permission to break something. "He makes me happy," she said. There it was. The tear I hadn't felt forming slid down my cheek without sound. Not for the man, not even for her, but for the sudden, sharp knowing that I wasn't going to be the center of her world anymore. 2 weeks. That's how long it had been since the papers were signed. 2 weeks. And she was in love. My throat burned. "You said we'd take it slow." "I know," she whispered. "But sometimes life doesn't wait." I looked at her, really looked, and I saw it, the flicker in her eyes, like she was trying to outrun her own loneliness. She wasn't cruel, just desperate to feel alive again. That didn't make it hurt less. "What's his name?" I asked. "David." I nodded once. It was the kind of name that didn't tell you anything. "And he's moving in," she added, like the words would land softer if she said them gently. My chest tightened. There was no room for that sentence inside this house. Not in the drawers where my dad's old tools still sat. Not in the hallway where his shoes used to rest. "Not here," I said. "He can't live here." She didn't fight me. She just looked down, eyes glossy. And that's when I knew he was already on his way. The next morning, I heard the knock, 3 short raps, like someone trying to be polite. I didn't move, didn't breathe from behind my bedroom door. I listened to her footsteps cross the floor, her voice sing out, too bright. And then his voice, low, warm, familiar in the worst way. I pressed my ear to the wood and waited for the sound of my world shifting again. I was 13, the first time I realized my mother could lie to me and still look me in the eyes. The kitchen felt colder than usual that night, not from the weather, but from the way she sat across from me, hands clenched around a chipped mug of chamomile tea, steam rising like a veil she could hide behind. Her shoulders were tucked in, her lips twitching like she wanted to say something, but didn't know how. I waited. I already knew. She had been vanishing after dinner, coming home with that soft, stunned look in her eyes, not sad, not tired, just somewhere else. At first, I blamed the divorce, the silence in the house, the way no one touched the piano anymore. But something about tonight felt final. "Claire," she said. My name sounded fragile in her mouth. I didn't answer. "I've met someone." I flinched. It was instinct, like hearing a door slam behind you. She tried to smile. "His name is David, and he makes me happy." Happy. The word felt stolen. My breath caught, sharp and small. You said we were going to take our time. I know, she whispered, her voice folding in on itself. But sometimes life moves faster than we plan. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I didn't want comfort, I wanted answers. It's been 2 weeks, I said, 2 weeks. She looked down, her knuckles white around the mug. I know how it looks, but I've been alone a long time, Claire, even before the papers, like signing them erased what came before, like it canceled my dad out of our story. I don't care how happy he makes you, I said. He doesn't belong here. She closed her eyes, a breath trembling out of her. I just need you to meet him, she said. Give him a chance. I stood up, my chair scraped loud against the floor. No, her voice was a whisper as I walked away. Please, Claire. I went to my room, slammed the door, sat on the bed, with fists pressed to my knees, until they went numb. She had someone new. Just like that. And I was still trying to understand how someone could disappear from your life, while their toothbrush still sat in the bathroom. The next morning, I heard it 3 knocks, not loud, not soft, the kind of knock that says, I don't want to scare you, but I'm here. My heart pounded. I stayed frozen in bed. Through the thin walls, I could hear my mom's footsteps, her voice rising like it always did when she was nervous then. His voice, warm, deep, measured. I hated that it didn't sound awful. I hated that it sounded safe. I heard them talking, her little laugh, the soft thud of luggage being set down. My throat felt thick. I got up and cracked the door, just enough to see him, tall, calm hair silvering at the edges like frost on stone. He was holding a small potted plant, a peace lily. Of course he was. He turned slightly, his eyes catching mine. He smiled. I closed the door before I could smile back. David didn't say much the first week he moved in. He was careful. Too careful, like he'd read a manual on how not to disturb a wounded animal. I watched him from the staircase sometimes, half hidden, legs curled beneath me, eyes peeking through the banister rails, while he unpacked neatly, moved quietly, and spoke with a softness that made me suspicious. He took the smaller bedroom without a word. He didn't touch the pictures in the hallway, even the ones where my dad still smiled like everything was perfect. He made coffee in silence every morning, leaving the pot full even though I hated coffee. Still, he left it, like he thought I'd change. I didn't. At dinner, he always asked how my day was. I never told him. I spoke to Mom in one-word answers and barely looked at him. But he kept asking every night. I started to keep track of the questions, like a tally waiting for the one where he'd slip, reveal what he really wanted. Men always wanted something. Claire, do you like books? Claire, have you always painted your nails black? Claire, what's your favorite kind of music? My answers. No, yes, silence. He never pushed one afternoon. I caught him folding laundry, my hoodie, inside out. He smoothed the sleeves before placing it on the pile. Something about that gesture made my skin crawl. It was too intimate, too practiced. Later that night, I heard Mom laughing in the kitchen. The sound was sharp, sudden, like someone had turned it back on after months of silence. I crept halfway down the stairs and saw him pouring her wine. Red, one glass. He didn't even pour one for himself. That made me madder than anything. He was being perfect. Like he'd read the script and memorized every line. At school the next day, I told Zoe about him. He's weird, I said. She chewed her gum. Creepy weird. No, worse, he's nice. She raised an eyebrow. You think he's faking it? Everyone fakes it. She leaned in. You know, my cousin's ex-stepdad pretended to be a saint for like 6 months. Then, boom, total psycho. I didn't need the story. I already had one playing out at home. That night, I left my journal on my desk open. Just a little, not enough to be obvious, but enough. I went to the living room and made sure to be seen texting on the couch for an hour. When I came back to my room, the journal was still there, page open to a blank entry. But something was different. The pen I'd left diagonally across the page had moved. Slightly, I picked it up, turned it in my fingers. No ink smudge, no crease, just. Off the next morning, David was drinking tea instead of coffee. Sleep okay? He asked. Fine, I said, staring at the mug. Earl Grey, not his usual, he smiled. Tea's good for thinking. I didn't answer, just looked at the tea, then at him. Maybe I was imagining it. But something about that pen being moved, something told me he knew more about me than he let on. And I hated that part of me wanted him to. The game started in the kitchen. It always starts somewhere small, somewhere safe. David was rinsing dishes, sleeves rolled, humming something soft and forgettable. I stood near the fridge, arms crossed, watching him. You always clean like that? I asked. He glanced over. Like what? Like you're in a commercial, all peaceful and methodical. He laughed, but not the mocking kind, just quiet, patient. Maybe I like a clean sink, he said, turning off the faucet. Or maybe you're trying too hard. He didn't respond right away, just wiped his hands on a towel and faced me. I'm not trying to win anything, Claire, just trying not to get in your way. That answer annoyed me, because it wasn't wrong. Still, I shrugged. You're already in my way, you live here. A pause. He nodded like he agreed. You want me gone? I hesitated. It wasn't a trap. His tone wasn't angry, just open. I want my dad, I said. The air shifted, like someone had dropped a glass on the floor, and it hadn't shattered yet. David didn't flinch. I'm not here to replace him, he said. I couldn't if I tried. I hated how even that sounded true. Mom walked in then, oblivious, talking about takeout. David stepped back like he knew the moment was done, like he understood when to disappear. That made me more suspicious. Later that week, she insisted on a family dinner, somewhere nice. Neutral ground, she called it. David wore a gray button-up shirt and held the car door open for both of us. I rolled my eyes, but I got in. The restaurant was bright, crowded, loud. I picked at my food, watched the couples around us, wondered which ones were pretending. David asked about school. Mom beamed when I answered. I kept my voice flat. Then I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Why did your last marriage end?" He paused. Not long, not enough to call it hesitation, but enough to notice. "My daughter died," he said. The table went still. Mom's fork clinked against her plate. She reached for his hand, but he didn't look at her. His eyes were on me. "It broke everything," he said. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. On the drive home, no one spoke. When we got inside, I went straight to my room. I sat on the floor and stared at the carpet until my vision blurred. An hour later, a knock, soft, almost hesitant. David stood in the doorway. "I just wanted to say," he began, "thank you for asking. Most people pretend not to care." I didn't move. He didn't come in. "I'm not here to be your dad," he said, "but I do want to be someone you can trust." Then he walked away, no pressure, no speeches. And for the first time since he'd arrived, I didn't know how to feel. It started with a drawer I wasn't supposed to open. Mom had gone to bed early, and David was out walking the dog, his idea, of course. The house was quiet, in the way only nighttime quiet can be. I stood in the hallway, eyes flicking toward her room, then toward the old sideboard in the den, the one with the top drawer that always stuck. I pulled it anyway inside. A mess of photos, loose, unsorted, some faded, Dad's handwriting on the back of one. A grocery list in his scrawl tucked between old receipts. My throat tightened. There was one photo of him holding me in a beach towel, my cheeks round, sunburned, his hair windswept. He looked alive, alive in the way he never was near the end. I sat on the floor, letting the pictures spill around me like leaves, piece by piece. I put together a version of our family that no longer existed. And then I found it out of place, tucked beneath a crumpled envelope. A photo of David, not with Mom, with another woman. And a teenage girl who looked almost like me, same eyes, same tilt to the head. My heart kicked. They stood in front of a modest white house. She had her arm wrapped around his. He smiled, not the careful, cautious smile I knew, but real. Warm, open, written on the back in fading ink. Emily's 14th birthday. I stared at the name Emily. It sounded soft and distant, but real that night. I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, the photo hidden under my pillow. I didn't know why I didn't just ask him or her, but something about the secrecy made it mine. In the morning, I waited until Mom was in the shower. David was drinking coffee, flipping through the local paper like a retiree. I walked in, dropped the photo on the table, and said, "Who's Emily?" His hand froze mid-turn. His eyes flicked from the photo to me, not startled, not angry, just older somehow. "She was my daughter," he said was. I sat down, my breath caught in my chest. "She died 3 years ago," he continued. "Car accident. It was raining. She was coming home from school." I stared at the photo. "Why didn't you tell me?" He placed the paper down, folded, precise. "Your mom thought it would be too much. But it's not hers to decide." "No," he said softly. "It's not." He looked at the photo again, eyes distant. "She would have liked you," I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded that night. I went back to the drawer and found the envelope I'd ignored before. Inside was a letter, unopened, addressed to Emily, dated 3 days before the accident. I sat with it in my lap, heart hammering. I didn't open it. It didn't belong to me. But I held it for a long, long time. The hallway felt longer that night. Every step I took toward the living room was slower than the one before. Not because I was scared, at least, not in the usual way. It was more like walking through thick fog, quiet, hesitant, heavy, with the weight of something unspoken. David sat on the couch. Alone, the lamp beside him cast a soft pool of light over the book in his lap. His reading glasses, which I didn't even know he owned, rested on the bridge of his nose. He looked up when he saw me. I held the photo between my fingers. He nodded once, like he already knew why I'd come. "I didn't mean for you to find that," he said. "I know." I sat down across from him, not next to him, just close enough to hear the hum of the lamp, the quiet turning of pages he hadn't read in the last 10 minutes. "She looks like me," I said. He smiled faintly. "Yes, I noticed that too." There was a long silence between us, but not the tense kind, just space, breathing room. "She died and your marriage fell apart," I said. "Is that why you moved here?" He nodded slowly. "I didn't want to be in a house full of ghosts, so I found a smaller one, quieter, close to the sea. Then I met your mom." Another pause. "Did you love her more than Emily's mom?" I asked. His eyes flickered, not surprise, not offense, just memory. "It's not about more," he said. "It's about different." I nodded. I didn't fully understand that, but part of me accepted it anyway. He leaned back, set the book aside. "Can I ask you something, Claire?" I looked at him. "What did you think when you saw her picture?" I hesitated. The real answer felt too fragile, but I gave it anyway. I was jealous. He didn't flinch, didn't correct me, didn't soothe. "I'm sorry," he said instead, "that you felt that way." Something in my chest cracked. I wiped at my cheek before a tear could fall. I think I wanted to believe I was the only one who made you stay." "You are," he said. Now, my voice came out smaller than I meant. "Do you miss her every day?" He said it like a fact, not a confession, not a burden, just truth. I looked down at the letter still in my hand. "I didn't open it," I whispered. "I couldn't." "You don't have to," he said gently. "It's not a story that needs to be read to be real." Another silence. And then I did something I hadn't done since the day he moved in. I reached across the space between us and handed him the envelope. He held it carefully, reverently, as if it still carried her breath inside. "Thank you," he said. I nodded, stood up. And before I left the room, I looked at him one more time. And for the first time, I didn't see a stranger. Rain tapped gently against the kitchen window like it was too polite to be a storm. Mom had already left for her shift. David was making pancakes, the kind with blueberries that leave tiny purple bruises on the plate. He didn't say anything when I walked in, just slid one onto a plate and pushed it toward me. I took it without a word. For a long time, we ate in silence, the kind that used to feel forced, but not today. It felt like neither of us needed to fill it. Eventually, I asked, "Did Emily like pancakes?" He smiled. "She used to make tiny faces on them with chocolate chips. Everyone had a different mood." I nodded, chewing slower. "What kind of mood do you think this one has?" He looked at my plate. "That one, definitely skeptical." I let out a breath that was almost a laugh. After breakfast, I found myself sitting on the couch while he folded laundry. He handed me a sweatshirt that wasn't mine, soft green, faded cuffs. "Was this hers?" He paused, then nodded. "It's the only thing I brought with me." I held it for a moment, not sure what to do with it. The fabric smelled like drawer wood and quiet sadness. I folded it gently and set it beside him. "I don't think I've been very fair," I said. He glanced at me. "To me, to anyone." He didn't answer, but his stillness felt like listening. "It's just, I didn't know there was a version of my mom that wasn't mine." He looked down. "I didn't know there was a version of me that could care again." That hit harder than I expected. Later that afternoon, he came to my room, knocked once. "I have something," he said, holding a small square wrapped in brown paper. I opened it on my bed after he left. It was a watercolor painting, a girl standing on a dock, reaching her hand toward the water, where her reflection didn't quite match. The colors were soft, the lines unsure on the back, in small handwriting. "She'd have liked you too." I pressed the paper to my chest and closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was falling through something. I just felt still, seen, like maybe, for now, that was enough. I started writing again, not because anyone told me to, but because something inside me felt too full. Words had a way of catching what I couldn't say out loud. They sat still for me. Let me rearrange them until the mess made sense. Most nights, I'd curl up on the floor beside my bed, back against the wall, pen in hand, notebook open on my knees. I wrote about how the house felt different, not better, not worse, just unfamiliar, like a song I used to know but couldn't hum anymore. I wrote about my mom's laugh, how I hadn't heard it in years, not really, and now it was back, but pointed somewhere else. I wrote about David, not directly. I wasn't ready for that. But I described hands that never shook when they passed a glass, a voice that didn't rise to prove itself, eyes that didn't flinch when I stared too long. I called the essay "The Man in My House." At school, we were told to submit something, anything, for a writing contest. I didn't think twice, just handed it in and walked away. A week later, Miss Flores pulled me aside after class. Her voice was quiet, almost careful. "Claire, your piece." She hesitated. It made me cry. I blinked. "Sorry." She smiled gently. That's what real writing does." I nodded, but inside I felt exposed, like I'd left something of myself on paper that I hadn't meant for anyone to find. That night, I came home and tossed the notebook on the couch. I forgot Mom was home early. I didn't even notice she'd picked it up until I heard her whisper my name. I turned. She was standing in the doorway, eyes glossy, the pages open in her hands. "Did you mean this?" she asked. I froze, my breath stuck somewhere between shame and defiance. "I don't know," I said, "maybe." She looked at me like she was seeing something she hadn't noticed before, like maybe I wasn't just angry, or bitter, or difficult. Maybe I was just hurt. She walked over, sat beside me, and placed the notebook between us. "You never have to lie to me on paper," she said. "Even if it hurts." My throat burned. I nodded. "I'm still figuring it out," I whispered. "Me too," she said. For a long time, we sat there, no apologies, no advice. Just the sound of the dishwasher humming in the next room, and the quiet understanding that maybe words weren't meant to fix us. Maybe they were just meant to hold us while we healed. The balloons were deflated before the party even began. Mom had tried, I could tell. She baked a cake, strung paper lights across the porch, and made me wear the blue dress I hated, but couldn't argue about without breaking the fragile peace we'd built. David hovered, quietly helpful, carrying plates, setting out chairs, smiling like he didn't expect anything in return. Zoe came. A couple of cousins I barely knew, Ms. Flores even stopped by, handed me a card with a handwritten note. "Keep writing, you're braver than you think." I nodded, said thanks, drifted through the afternoon like I wasn't fully in it. When the sun started to fall and the porch lights clicked on, Mom called everyone in for cake. David brought out a small box, wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with string. "I know this isn't much," he said, but it felt right. I opened it. Inside was a hardcover book, The Wind in the Willows. The same edition Dad used to read to me, worn spine, dog-eared pages. I froze. He must have found out or guessed. Or maybe Mom told him. Either way, it felt like a theft. I set the book down slowly. Everyone watched, quiet now. "Why would you give me this?" I asked. David looked confused. "Your mom said it was your favorite." "That's not the point, Claire. No, you don't get to replace things just because you think they're broken." The room went silent. Mom stepped forward. "Honey," he was trying to be thoughtful. I turned to her. "Thoughtful? He's been thoughtful since the day he moved in. Thoughtful like a stranger who knows the choreography, but not the song." Her face dropped. I could feel the words burning now, like they'd waited too long to escape. "You moved him in like it was nothing, like we were a blank slate. But I still had pictures hanging on the walls, Mom. I still had memories. You just painted over them." David opened his mouth, then closed it. I stood up. My chair scraped hard against the floor. "I can't breathe in this house," I said. "Not with him. Not with you pretending everything's fine." Then I walked out. No coat, no phone. Just the cold bite of air and the sound of stunned silence fading behind me. The cliff wasn't far, but it felt like a lifetime away. I walked without thinking through side streets, past empty storefronts, across the old footbridge with its rusted rail. The cold wind hit harder near the water, sharp, honest. I found the spot where Dad used to take me when I was little. A flat slab of stone overlooking the sea. We'd sit there in silence, tossing pebbles, making up names for the clouds. I hadn't been back since he left. I sat cross-legged, arms wrapped tight around my ribs. The sky was cracked with gray, the ocean restless, always moving, like it couldn't make up its mind. For the first time in months, I let myself cry without hiding it, not the angry kind, not the stubborn kind. Just tired tears, quiet, real. I cried for my father, for the version of him that only existed in memory, for the space he left behind that no one knew how to fill. I cried for Mom, for the way she smiled now with a different rhythm, for how she tried to hold on and move on in the same breath. And I cried for David, because somewhere along the line, I stopped wanting him gone. And I didn't know what to do with that. I heard footsteps before I saw him. He didn't call my name, just walked slowly, hands in his jacket pockets, stopping a few feet behind me. I didn't turn. He didn't ask me to. He just sat down beside me, not too close, not too far. The way you sit when you're not trying to fix someone. Just stay with them. We sat in silence, watching the sea throw itself against the rocks like it was trying to be heard. I never meant to take anything from you, he said softly. Not your space, not your memories, not your father. My throat was thick. I didn't answer. But I stayed, he said. Not because your mother asked me to, not because I needed somewhere to go. I stayed because I saw you. The words didn't hit all at once. They sank like rain into soil. I turned to him. You're not my dad, I said. He nodded, eyes steady. I know, but you showed up. A pause, and I think that's enough. The wind pulled at our sleeves. The sky dimmed for a long time. We didn't speak again. And it was the most honest conversation I'd had in years. We didn't talk about the cliff again. Not because we were avoiding it, but because some moments don't need retelling. They live in the silence between people, in the way we start seeing each other differently afterward. I came home that night soaked to the bone. My shoes left muddy prints in the hallway. Mom didn't scold me. She didn't ask questions. She just opened her arms, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let her hold me. The next morning, things didn't magically fix themselves. The kitchen was still too quiet. The corners of the house still held memories like dust. But something had shifted. David moved into the guest room a few days later. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No big decision. He just quietly started carrying his things down the hall. Mom watched him go with a soft kind of sadness. But she didn't stop him. I think we all knew we needed space. Not because we didn't care, but because we finally did. School rolled on. I kept writing. Miss Flores submitted the man in my house to a statewide journal without telling me. It got published. In the hallway one day, someone stopped me and said, "Your story made me cry." I nodded, like I understood what that meant now. One Saturday, I painted a mural on the side of the garage. Just me and a ladder, and a few cans of color I talked David into buying. On one side was a family of three: me, mom, and dad, standing beneath a tree. The lines were soft, blurred, a memory on the other side. Another version of us, me again, older, beside mom. And David, not replacing, just present between them. I left space, an open sky, a quiet in-between. When it dried, I stood back and stared at it for a long time. David came out to see it. He didn't say anything at first. Then quietly, "That's the most honest wall I've ever seen." I smiled. "Yeah, me too." Inside, mom was baking. The smell of cinnamon filled the house. It still hurt sometimes, in the small ways: a song, a laugh, the shape of a jacket hanging near the door. But hurt didn't mean broken anymore. It just meant we were still here, still trying. And maybe that was all we ever really needed.